Friends, Namaskar. Welcome back to this online refresher course in education that is a concerns in educational research and assessment under ARPIT 2019. I am Arvind Kumar Jha from Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow, and extending my greetings to you all on behalf of National Resource Center for Education, that is NRC for Education, Central University of South Bihar, Gaya. This is the next part of the topic, that is a focus group discussion. In this previous part, that is a part 1, we have already discussed focus group discussion, why focus group discussion, role of focus group discussion, guidelines for focus group discussion, how to conduct a focus group discussion, setting the ground rules and leading the group. Then we talked about things needed for focus group discussion. Now, in this part, that is a part 2, we will discuss about questions to organize some issues involved with focus group discussion. How do we use focus group? Specific points to guide development of focus group discussion. Opening script for facilitators of vocabularies of gender focus group. Promise of confidentiality, focus group discussion in education, potential and limitations of focus group discussion, what are the advantage and disadvantage of conducting focus group, the role of moderator, and ethical issues involved in focus group discussion. Now friends, I'll be talking about questions to organize some issues involved with focus group discussion. So what are the questions you need to keep in mind? Question number 1, have you chosen a topic that will evoke multiple perspectives and on which informants can bring their individual experiences to bear? Question number 2, have you developed a strategy to emphasize to informants that their ideas will be valued and that what they say in the group will stay confidential? Question number 3, will you be able to build groups that have diversity among the participants? Question number 4, how will you plan the sequence of the group from introductions to developing rapport to structuring the group's talk? These are not only 3 or 4 questions that you keep in mind. There could be multiple questions that you can frame according to the nature of your research problem and need when you are going to collect the data, particularly utilizing focus group discussion. So definitely now I'll be going to talk about how do you use focus groups. So what are the steps that you keep in mind? Here only I'll be talking about step 1 step, 2 step or 7 steps. You can decide on the number of steps, or you can choose why step by step, the 10 steps, only 3 steps are sufficient for you. But let me talk about how to use focus group. So step number 1, because many new researchers, those who are very enthusiastic that they are going to use focus group discussions, and it's good to see that in the field of education people are using this as a device. So the first step is develop questions. As I said earlier, again I'm underlining, friends, that the questions are the key. That's the first step. Step number 2, select the team. You cannot do alone. You cannot do on your own. You need to have a team if you want to collect the qualitative data using focus group discussion. Step number 3, select the participant. Number 4, decide on timing and locations. Suppose if you decide a time when examination is going on and you want, okay, what kind of curriculum we should have, what kind of syllabus we can have, or what components we need to add or delete. I don't think students will be very interested to come to participate in focus group discussion because the end term semester examination is going on. Step number 5, prepare the discussion guide. Step number 6, conduct the interview. Step number 7, debrief the team. That's very important. Step number 8, analyze the results. Now, let's discuss in detail. As I said, what is the first step? The first step is develop the questions. As with all other data collection, you should follow the same process and arrive at stage number 5. So, what are the things that are important? Deciding what information is required. How will you use the information in decision making? From which stakeholders will you get this information? What are the most appropriate tools for collecting the information? What are the specific questions? And therefore, if you want to develop questions for focus group discussion, it should be based on approximately 5 to 10 questions. And these questions should aim to stimulate opinions and perceptions. And the order of the question is very important. At the beginning, you may want to ask questions to engage the participants and build trust in the groups. Then you explore the issues in more depth. And at the end, you should include 1 or 2 wrap-up questions that are asked for issues that have not been covered previously. Certain types of questions impede group discussions. For example, yes or no questions elicit little information and do not stimulate discussion, friends. Why questions put people on the defensive and cause them to take politically correct sides on controversial issues. Open-ended questions are more useful because they allow participants to tell their story in their own words and add details that can result in unanticipated findings. In place of why, you can ask probing questions after an open-ended questions to help participants dig more deeply. For example, tell me more about that. What do you mean by that? Or can you give me examples? So questions should be short and to the point, focused on one dimension each, unambiguously worded, non-threatening or non-embarrassing. Now let me move to this step number 2. As I said earlier, select the team. Conducting a focus group interview requires a small team with at least a facilitator to guide the discussion and a note taker to record it. The facilitator should be able to put people at ease and elicit response to the questions. He or she will need to be flexible in responding to the different directions the discussion might go and also be able to bring the discussion back to relevant topics. Even if the session is being recorded, a note taker can be helpful in recording interactions. It's not that if the technology is there, then there should not be note takers. Non-verbal reactions and nuances that a tape or video recorder does not capture. The note taker should write things down as close to verbatim as possible, or if abbreviating, he or she should make sure abbreviated text accurately represents what participants are saying. He or she should check with participants for accuracy and ask for clarification if he or she did not capture what was said. The team should have a substantive knowledge of the topic under discussion, and that's very important, and that's why knowledge is the key. you're all members, most of the members should be knowledgeable of the topic under hand for the research. Step number 3, select the participants. I have already said about that, but few more words. The information needs of the study will, to a large extent, identify who should be represented in the focus groups. Obviously, not all can be the representative, and not all should be in the focus group. Often separate focus groups are held for different populations: gender, age, class, ethnicity, employment, community, etc., etc. Once the population has been chosen, identify the most suitable participants for the focus group. One of the best approaches is to consult key informants who know about local conditions. Consult several informants to minimize the biases of individual preferences. Each focus group should be, as I said earlier, 6 to 10, 10 to 15 people to allow for the smooth flow of conversations. Participants should be homogeneous, sharing common traits related to the discussion topic, and people may be more inclined to discuss their views and perspectives if they are assured there will be no recrimination. And that's the key. Ideally, people should not know each other. But yes, some researchers have said, no, it is easier that people should know each other. You need to decide yourself. Though there may be situations in which this is not possible. Anonymity lowers inhibition and prevents formation of cliques. Now I'll talk about step number 4, decide on timing and location. Few suggestions. The ideal amount of time to set aside for a focus group is anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. Beyond that, most groups are not productive and it becomes an imposition on participant time. Hold it at a convenient location with some degree of privacy, as stated earlier. Step number 5, prepare the discussion guide. And preparing the discussion guide is a key for any focus group study, friends. This discussion guide is an outline of the upcoming interview that covers the topics and issues to be discussed and aids the team in conducting the session. The guide should contain only a few items, allowing some time and flexibility to pursue unanticipated but relevant issues. The guide provides the framework for the facilitator to explore, probe, and ask questions. Initiating each topic with a carefully crafted questions will help keep the discussion focused. Step number 6, conduct the interview. Resources required: safe and suitable location, flip charts and markers, skilled facilitator, taping equipments, preferably note taker. Now, let me talk about the process when I talk about the conducting the interview. The first process is, at the beginning of the session, outline the purpose and format of the discussion. Often participants do not know what to expect from focus group discussion, and having clear information will help set the group at ease. The second process, define the general guidelines that will be followed throughout the session. And for that, there are no right or wrong answers, friends. All views are welcome. Everyone should speak. Opinions, views expressed will not be attributed to a specific individual. It's a group, because we are using focus group discussion method. This session is confidential. It will not be published or broadcast. The facilitator will keep the discussion focused. Ask if everyone is comfortable with the guidelines. Introduce all non-participants in the room and explain their roles. Begin asking the questions. Keep questions open-ended. If the discussion is too broad, narrow responses by asking specific follow-up questions. When participants give incomplete or irrelevant answers, probe further, and that's why clear responses will follow. Control the discussion. In most groups, a few people dominate the discussion, but you should not allow that. Minimize group pressures by probing for alternative views or ideas. When an idea is being adopted without any general discussion or disagreement, more than likely group pressure is occurring. If possible, the discussion should be tape recorded as said time and again. A high quality omnidirectional microphone, tape recorder, several tapes and microphones should stand are all needed. Each tape should be leveled at time of completion of the interview. A note taker is also needed, as I said earlier, since it's not everything can be captured in a recording. Notes should be extensive and reflect the content of the discussion as well as non-verbal behavior, as said earlier. So facial expressions, hand movements, how assertive or how restrained people are. Discussions should be reported in participants' language, retaining their phrases and grammatical use. Summarizing or paraphrasing responses can be misleading. For instance, a verbatim reply, "Yes, indeed, I am positive," loses its intensity when recorded as yes. Friends, wrap-up is very important, as I said earlier. Close the interview by thanking the participants for their ideas and suggestions and reiterating how such plans to use the interview finding to strengthen their work in the community or in the region. Seventh step, debrief the LER team. It means what? Shortly, after each focus group interview, the team should discuss how the interview went, summarize the information that was heard, and consider implications of the information for the study. And as it happens with all study, analyze the results. Let me talk a little bit about this. Once the interviews have been written up, if taped, or the notes have been typed up, the team should assemble all transcriptions, notes, summaries, and any other relevant data to analyze trends and patterns. And therefore, to do that, what method you should use? The following methods can be used. Number one, read summaries all at once time. Note potential trends and patterns, strongly held or frequently aired opinions. Read each transcript. Highlight sections that correspond to the discussion guide questions and mark those comments that could be used in the final report. Third, analyze each question separately. Don't intermingle. After reviewing all the responses to a question or topic, write a summary statement that describes the discussion. In analyzing the results, the team should consider words. Number one. What does it mean? It means weigh the meaning of words participants used. Can a variety of words and phrases categorize similar responses? Or can the repeated use of a word or phrase mean more than one thing? So words. Second, framework. Consider the circumstances in which a comment was made, context of previous discussion, tone and intensity of the comment. Then you'll have to find out the internal agreement. Figure out whether shifts in opinions during the discussions were caused by group pressure. Precision of responses are very important. Decide which responses were based on personal experiences and give them greater weight than those based on vague impersonal impressions. Therefore, you need to find out the big picture. When I'm saying the big picture, it means pinpoint major ideas, allocate time to step back and reflect on major findings. And then finally, what is the purpose of the report? Consider the objectives of the study and the information needed for decision making. The type and scope of reporting will guide the analytical process. For example, focus group reports typically are brief oral reports that highlight key findings. Number 2, descriptive reports that summarize the discussion, and analytical reports that provide trends, patterns of findings and include selected comments. So therefore, you need to know the points that will guide the development of focus group discussion. So what you need to do, which points you need to keep in mind? Number 1, each section of the guide should have questions that directly respond to the research questions so that analysis is relevant. There should be a maximum of 4 to 5 major questions, each followed by probing questions. The discussion should not last more than, as I said earlier, 1 to 1.5 hours. And questions should be, that's the key friends, be open. That is, questions that cannot be answered with yes or no. They usually start with, could you tell me how ... What would you do when ... What do you think of so on and so forth? And therefore, focus group discussions are useful when they give deep information. And to get deep information, probing is the key. The challenge is that a good discussion facilitator who masters what the project is about and what we are trying to get to, and the analytical framework at best internal to all this, rarely through, and it decides on probing questions as the discussion unfolds. And therefore, you should pick up on an answer or a series of answers to ask questions that would help better understand the nature of the change that we are bringing. And therefore, it is very important that you should maintain not only these points while conducting this, but you should also talk about when you are opening the script for facilitators of vocabularies. For example, I'll talk about the gender focus groups as an example of how to get started. Now, I'll be talking about focus group discussion in education. After all, we are going to conduct research in the field of education. I have no hesitation to say that using qualitative research methodology for pedagogic research can provide informative insights into student experiences of the teaching and learning environment in almost all sort of education, and particularly in colleges, universities, which we generally refer to higher education. By outlining this strategies for effective focus group organization, highlighting good practice from the social sciences and pedagogic literature, and providing a critique of the recent kind of a study that have taken place. Friends, so in education, for almost all kind of act, you can, if it is related to the opinion, the attitude, or what should be there in the form of content, what shouldn't be there in the form of content, which strategy should be used to understand a particular concept, or when you are using the concept mapping to understand a particular thing. Across the topic, you can use this tool as a research methodology tool to collect the data. Now I'll be talking about what are the potentials and limitations of this, and along with this advantage and this advantage. There are researchers, they have argued that interaction is the crucial feature of focus group because the interaction between participants highlight their view of the world. In a sense, the language they use about an issue and their values and beliefs about a situation that will provide a world perspective to you. Interaction also enables participants to ask questions of each other as well as to reevaluate and reconsider their own understanding of the specific experiences. Another benefit, as I mentioned time and again, is that focus group elicit information in a way which allows the researcher to find out why an issue is salient as well as what is salient about it. As a result, the gap between what people say and what they do can be better understood. If multiple understandings and meanings are revealed by participants, multiple explanations of their behavior and attitudes will be more readily articulated. And therefore, the benefits to participants of focus group research should not be underestimated. The opportunity to be involved in decision-making processes, to be valued as experts, and to be given the chance to work collaboratively with researchers can be empowering for many participants. If a group works well, trust develops, and the group may explore solutions to a particular problem as a unit rather than as individuals. Not everyone will experience these benefits, as focus group can also be intimidating at times, especially for inarticulate or shy members. Hence, focus groups are not empowering for all participants, and other methods may offer more opportunities for participants. However, if participants are actively involved in something which they feel will make a difference, and focus group research is often applied nature, empowerment can realistically be achieved, friends. So another achievement of focus groups to clients, users, participants or consumers is that they can become a forum for change. And I have always maintained that a student's participation should be used for a change in the curricular content as well as the co-curricular content, friends, both during the focus group meeting itself and afterwards. For example, in research conducted by Goss and Lindbach, the participants in the research experienced a sense of emancipation through speaking in public and by developing reciprocal relationships with the researchers. In another study done by Smith and others, patients in hospitals were invited to give their views about services and to probe ideas about improvements. In this instance, change occurred at the management level as a direct result of patients' input. Although focus group research has many advantages, as with all research methods, there are limitations. Some can be overcome by careful planning and moderating, but others are unavoidable and particular to this approach. The researcher or moderator, for example, has less control over the data produced than in either quantitative studies or one-to-one interviews. The moderator has to allow participants to talk to each other, ask questions, and express doubts and opinions while having very little control over interaction other than generally keeping participants focused on the topic. By its nature, focus group research is open-ended and cannot be entirely predetermined as said time and again. It should not be assumed that the individuals in a focus group are individual view. They are speaking in a specific context, within a specific culture, and so sometimes it may be difficult for the researcher to clearly identify an individual message. This too is a potential limitation of focus group, friends. And on a particular note, focus group can be difficult to assemble. It may not be easy to get a representative sample, and focus group may discourage certain people from participating. For example, those who are not very articulate or confident, and those who have communication problem or special needs. The method of focus group discussion may also discourage some people from trusting others with sensitive or personal information. In such cases, personal interviews or the use of workbooks along with focus groups may be a more suitable approach. Finally, friends, focus groups are not fully confidential or anonymous because the material is shared with the others in the group, and therefore you should keep its advantages and disadvantages in your mind. This is what I wanted to tell about this. Now let me talk about the role of a moderator. Once a meeting has been arranged, the role of a moderator or group facilitator becomes critical, especially in terms of providing clear explanations of the purpose of the groups, helping people feel at ease, and facilitating interaction between group members. And during the meeting, moderators will need to promote debate, perhaps by asking open questions. But at the same time, you need to keep in mind that it's not a debate. They may also need to challenge participants, especially to draw out people's differences and tease out a diverse range of meanings on the topic under discussion. Sometimes moderators will need to probe for details or move things forward when the conversation is drifting or has reached a minor conclusion. Moderators also have to keep the session focused, and so sometimes they may deliberately have to steer the conversation back on course. Moderators also have to ensure everyone participates and gets a chance to speak. As said earlier, nobody should be allowed to over-dominate. At the same time, moderators are encouraged not to show too much approval so as to avoid favoring particular participants. They must avoid giving personal opinions so as not to influence participants towards any particular position or opinion. Therefore, the role of a moderator is demanding and challenging one. And moderators will need to possess good interpersonal skills and personal qualities, being good listeners, non-judgmental and adaptable. And these qualities will promote the participants' trust in the moderator and increase the likelihood of open, interactive dialogue. Finally, the degree of control and direction imposed by moderators will depend upon the goals of the research as well as on their preferred style. If two or more moderators are involved in the facilitation of a focus group, agreement needs to be reached as to how much input or direction each will give. It is recommended that one moderator facilitates and the other takes notes and checks the recording equipments during the meeting. There needs to be consistency across focus groups, so carefully preparation with regard to role and responsibility is required. Friends, before I conclude, I'll talk about ethical issues involved in focus group discussion, few suggestions, and I'll conclude. See, as far as the ethical considerations for focus groups are concerned, they are the same as most of the other methods of social science research that we use. For example, when selecting and involving participants, researchers must ensure that full information about the purpose and uses of participants' contributions is given. Being honest and keeping participants informed about the expectations of the groups and topic, and not pressurizing participants to speak is good practice. A particular ethical issue to consider in this case of focus group is the handling of sensitive material and confidentiality, given that there will always be more than one participant in the group. At the outset, moderators will need to clarify that each participant's contributions will be shared with the others in the group as well as with the moderator. Participants need to be encouraged to keep confidential what they hear during the meeting, and researchers have the responsibility to anonymous data from the group. But before I conclude, friends, I would like to tell you that you need to read more and more literature. You need to see how focus group discussions are organized, how the various researchers have used. Only knowing the theoretical aspects of the focus group discussion or how it should be conducted, etc., will not help you much. Please use yourself first. Learn how others have used them, and only then it will help you. Only watching such videos will not help you much. I'm not saying they are not useful, but not helpful much. Why? Because it needs experiences. It needs valued understanding. It needs being sensitive and how to value this as a research tool. So in fine, I would like to say that using focus group discussion methodologies for epistemic and pedagogic researches can provide informative insights into student experiences of the teaching and learning environment in higher education. For any research, focus group discussion, we need to play dual roles of what? The dual roles of being participant as well as facilitator. And of course, they are the challenging, but they are not difficult. And challenge is the key factor to enjoy your life as a researcher. So friends, in this part of the discussion, we discussed about questions to organize some issues involved with focus group discussion, how do we use focus groups, specific points to guide development of focus group discussion, opening a script for facilitators of vocabularies of gender focus group, promise of confidentiality, focus group discussion in education, potential and limitations of focus group discussion, what are the advantages and disadvantages of conducting focus group, the role of moderator, and ethical issues involved in focus group discussion. This is all about this part. I hope that you would have enjoyed this session. Thanks for watching this video. Namaskar.